Welcome back to the Mental Playbook with Christine Dalgety, Season 2. This season, we are expanding the conversation, hearing from mental health experts, professionals from different industries, and people in the sports world about how they take care of their minds, handle challenges, and build the mindset to thrive both on the job and in life. So, grab a coffee, get comfy, tune in, get inspired, and let's dive into some fascinating conversations. Remember, your mind is super powerful, and with the right tools and knowledge, you can master your mental playbook. And while you're doing that, take care of you. Some of the topics we'll cover in this episode may include sensitive themes such as abuse or trauma. If these subjects might be triggering, please take care and consider whether this episode is right for you at this moment. If you want to better understand these experiences and how they show up in life, we encourage you to keep listening. Hey everybody, Christine here, and welcome back to the Mental Playbook with Christine Dalgety. We're recording on the weekend. I had my grandkids all day yesterday and last night, and this is about as work attire that I'm getting today. But we're rocking our new Dalgety Counseling and Psychotherapy sweatshirts that we made. We got our logo and Take Care of You on the back. So a little bit of branding. Anyway, they're comfy, so that's what we're wearing today. So today is the third part of a series that I've been doing on narcissism. And as I've stated in dealing with a narcissist and adult children of narcissistic parents, we're using those terms. I'm not diagnosing anybody with narcissism or narcissistic personality disorder. So today, the third one is co-parenting with a narcissist is how it's titled. But we're going to talk more about like high conflict communication and that sort of thing. Narcissistic behaviors. So I'm saying this, and I'll repeat this a few times throughout the podcast. I don't want someone to go to their ex-spouse and say, I watched a podcast and Christine Dalgety said that you're a narcissist, right? Because I'm not diagnosing anybody with it. I'm using this as more of an educational, so that you can look for the signs. So have you ever left an exchange thinking, how did that just become my fault? Or you send one calm message and you get a 5-paragraph reply accusing you of attacking them. If you're co-parenting with someone who seems to need control, attention, and the last word, then this podcast is for you. Grab a coffee and get comfy, or a drink, or whatever you want to do, a snack and get comfy, and let's dive into this. It's a pretty heavy topic. I'm going to try to focus on things to recognize and what to do about it. We're going to talk about co-parenting with a narcissist, what it looks like, how to tell you're in it, because sometimes if this is an ex-partner, you've already gone through, they didn't just change probably after the separation. Sometimes that does happen, but probably not. And most importantly, what you can do to protect your nervous system and your child's well-being. Because if it's co-parenting, children are in the middle of this. And like I said, this is education. It's not a diagnosis, and it is not legal advice. I'll talk about patterns of behavior that show up in high conflict co-parenting, including traits that overlap with narcissism. So if you're dealing with threats or safety concerns in this, you need to utilize your local supports. Okay? Before we get practical with the stuff, strategies, just a quick reality check. I have some statistics here. Family stress and mental health aren't separate topics in Canada. They overlap constantly. And a StatsCan study has reported that 18.3% of Canadians aged 15 plus met diagnostic criteria for a mood, anxiety, or substance use disorder in the prior 12 months. Now, that was from the Mental Health and Access to Care survey in 2022. As I often say with stats, because a lot of the stats, we get them years after, I think that this is probably higher now, given the state of our world. And just from my experience, what I see in my office, I think that stat's probably higher, as well as this one. For kids and teens, the mental health picture matters too. Statistics Canada release, using the Canadian Health Survey on Children and Youth, found that 1 in 5 youth who felt their mental health was good in 2019 no longer felt that way in 2023. And again, 2019 was pre-pandemic. So I can understand that 2023, they probably did not feel the same way, but also in 2026 now, I think that stat's probably higher too. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into this, so maybe it evens out. Maybe some people got help and stuff, but I think that's probably higher. And when relationships are unsafe or coercive, separation doesn't always end the conflict. That's what I was saying. If they were like that in the relationship, separating from them is not going to change them or change the conflict. In Canada in 2022, there were 117,093 police reported victims of intimate partner violence, age 12 plus, and 78% were women and girls. I am not saying that, like, this isn't all separated people, right? But this is just showing statistics, showing post-separation dynamics can amplify the control tactics that people have, and that can lead to violence. And children get pulled into the middle of it. So, co-parenting with a narcissist. What do we mean and what we don't? Let's define the phrase carefully. When most people say narcissist in co-parenting, they usually mean someone who repeatedly shows patterns like the following. So, low accountability. Everything is someone else's fault. High entitlement. Roles apply to others, not them. Image management. This is so true of narcissistic behavior, right? Charming publicly, difficult privately. Control through conflict. They win, keeping you reactive. Lack of empathy in practice, especially when it costs them something. Only identifying how it impacts them. I see that so often in our office with these types of situations. This isn't fair to me. I don't care. I'm not budging. This is my time with my child. Even if it's the child wants to do something and it involves the other parent, they don't switch, right? They only identify how it impacts them. So, like I said, I'm not diagnosing narcissistic personality disorder here, but on this podcast, a diagnosis is complex and it requires assessment. What we can do is talk about high conflict, self-centered, coercive patterns, and how to respond in ways that protect you and your child. Your job isn't to change them. Your job is to change the dance. So the child isn't the one paying the emotional bill. And I don't think this is anything that people don't already know, but when you do what I do, when you do what we do at Dalgety Counseling and Psychotherapy, we see firsthand the impact that this type of co-parenting has on the children. And as I go through today's podcast, I know there's going to be people out there that are either saying, oh, like it's in your family, or like your immediate, you and an ex-partner, or somebody and the child's going through this. And the parent that doesn't have the narcissistic behavior, it's really hard. So how do you know you're co-parenting with narcissistic high conflict patterns? What are the signs? If you've ever thought, why is something so simple suddenly a war? Then that's a very common sign. This part is for you then. So let's talk about the most common signs that I see when someone is co-parenting with narcissistic behavior or high conflict patterns. So we're going to look at how you can recognize the behaviors because once you name them, then you can stop internalizing them. Because, I was just talking to someone today who is separated, narcissistic ex-spouse, and now trying to co-parent with a narcissistic ex-spouse. And as this person's talking and they're saying things, it's somebody that I care about and love and, my personal life. So I was joking but not joking. And I think a number of times I said, yeah, you see that way because of narcissistic abuse, right? That this person experienced. And so you're going to recognize these, but once you recognize, you're going to stop internalizing them, because a common theme is, I was like, I just said this, and then it turned into this fight, or I just said this, there was no budging, or you're constantly internalizing and trying to figure it out. That's the gaslighting part. So the first sign that you could be in a high conflict narcissistic co-parenting situation: communication whiplash. You write something neutral like, pickup is at 5 p.m. Most likely you write that because it's in a court document and they always drop off at 5:10, 5:30 to control the narrative, to control the situation. So pickup is at 5. And they reply with, you're controlling. You always do this. You're trying to alienate me. Nothing about the time, everything about your character. So what's really happening? They're turning content into conflict. If the conversation stays emotional and chaotic, they never have to cooperate or be accountable. So mental reframe, this is not a misunderstanding. This is a strategy to derail the clarity of the situation, keep you in chaos. The second one is moving goalposts. This is a big one that I see. You agree on something. Maybe it's by text, maybe it's by email, maybe it's a court-ordered document. So a court order, and later it suddenly doesn't count. They reinterpret the conversation. They claim you meant something else. They act confused about things they were previously very clear about. What's really happening here? Stability removes their leverage. If things are stable, they can't change it and control it. Ambiguity gives them control, just like I said. And mental reframe for this: if you feel like you're constantly explaining the obvious, that's not because you're unclear. It's because clarity threatens the system that they benefit from. The third one, I've talked about this in the other two narcissistic behavior podcasts, and it's called triangulation. And in co-parenting, this can happen two ways, but the one, they can, if there is siblings, they can try to have the two siblings against each other, but that fits more into the narcissistic parenting. So what I'm going to talk about with triangulation here is pulling the child into adult problems. So you try to get the child, if you look at a triangle with the, point at the top, two at the bottom, and you try to get the child to come even with you against the other parent, or you just pull that child so that they're the go-to all the time in between. So examples that sound like, tell your mom I said, or if your dad wasn't so difficult. Again, sometimes in healthy co-parenting, it might be, oh, can you tell your mom I said this, right? That's not the same. If they will not communicate with you and they say, tell your dad he owes child support, right? Tell your dad child support was due last week, that kind of stuff. Or, I guess I don't matter as much as your other parent. You would not believe the amount of times I hear kids tell me that. That if they want to go with a parent, or if they say they had fun with a parent or something, the 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 parent with narcissistic behaviors says, "Oh, I guess you love them more. I guess I'm not the cool parent. I don't matter." Those guilt situations, right? Sometimes it's subtle and sometimes it's blatant. Either way, it places the child in what we call a loyalty bind. Canadian family justice research has long noted that children exposed to ongoing parental conflict are at higher risk for emotional and behavioral difficulties, even when there's no yelling. So often we say, don't yell in front of your children, don't fight in front of your children. And no, don't. I'm not saying, yeah, that's okay. Don't do that either. But there doesn't have to be yelling if they're being pulled into the middle and they have to be loyal to one parent or the other parent gets upset. The number of times that kids tell me that they don't want to talk about what happens at the other parent's house because they feel bad, or they get in trouble, or they feel guilty. The mental reframe for this, and I want all parents to hear this clearly, a child is not a messenger, and a child is not a mediator, and a child is not an emotional support person. You don't need to talk about the other parent to your child, and you don't need to discuss problems you're having. Adult problems, kids shouldn't even know about any of them. Financial problems, child support, that sort of thing, that is something I hear all the time too. Well, if your dad would pay more, if your mom would pay for this, I can't afford it because they're not their load, whatever. The kid doesn't care about that. They just want their soccer cleats, right? And they don't need to hear about that. When adults use them that way, the child's the one that pays the psychological and emotional, the emotional and psychological cost for that. The fourth one, winning, matters more than the child's ease. I just know there's people out there that are like, oh, they're listening, they're like, oh, right? You know, when you hear those things and it's like, oh, yep, got that one. So this is the moment where you realize they'll choose inconvenience for the child if it inconveniences you. So late drop-offs, last minute changes, refusing reasonable flexibility. That's what I was saying. No, it's my time. Even when it clearly benefits the child, they do not budge because they know it'll make it harder for you. Maybe it's a family reunion that you have, or something, it's your parent's birthday and you want the kids to go, and the other parent, the highly conflicting parent, will say no just to get at you, but then the child misses out. What's really happening here, the goal isn't co-parenting. The goal is not losing to you. And the mental reframe, when power matters more than peace, the child's comfort becomes collateral damage. You know, I think as I'm going over these two, I think that, and I say this to kids, sometimes married feelings and emotions, well, they're different than mom and dad, like mom to child, dad to child emotions when I'm trying to explain things to kids. And sometimes when people get hurt, you know, hurt people. Sometimes they will lash out and they forget what's really at stake. So it does become all about getting the control and getting back at the other person, losing the other person, and they're forgetting that there's a little person involved here, or a big person, right? It can be a teenager. It can be an adult. I have some clients right now that are adults and their parents are divorcing or separating, and they're especially being put in the middle. Both parents coming to them to talk about the other one. So we're working on some boundaries. So number 5 is they bait you and then they blame your reaction. So they provoke, they poke, they accuse, they distort. Eventually you react because, well, you're human. And suddenly you are unstable, you're aggressive, you are the high conflict parent. Gaslighting, right? They do all this stuff, and that is so true of narcissistic behavior. I said in the first podcast where with a partner, when they poke, they gaslight, you get upset, and then they're like, wow, you're abusive. You're really aggressive. And that's what makes people who are victims of narcissistic abuse ask their therapist if they're a narcissist, right? Because they're being told that. And if they're asking, then they most likely aren't. So what's really happening? This is reactive abuse or reaction-seeking behavior. They're doing this to make you react. And, I do have situations too where the parent who behaves with high conflict, they get the child to do some of these things too. Or they poke, they know the buttons, they do things to make the other parent react. And then they say to the child, see, this is why I don't want you alone with them. Or this is why you shouldn't stay at their house tonight. Those kinds of things. So it just keeps that cycle going, right? So I work with my clients in not reacting in those situations. It's not easy. So basically they create the fire, then point at the smoke and say, see, you're the problem. The mental reframe, your reaction is not proof of your instability. It's proof that your nervous system is under chronic stress. Number 6, they recruit allies. So they start building a team. It could be a new partner, and they just go on about how horrible you are and all the stuff they have to put up with. And remember, people with narcissistic behaviors are very charming at first. They're very charming. That's how they got you, right? And so, most likely. And so that's what they're doing to that other person. That other person will see it eventually, but so they recruit a new partner or extended family. Sometimes they try to recruit your extended family, and sometimes even professionals. We only go by what we hear, right? Well-trained professionals or people who've been doing this for a long time, like I can usually tell if it's accurate information or perception, or if somebody is just saying all this stuff to me, and I'm like, in my head, obviously I'm not judging them, but I'm thinking this is a perception thing, or it can't always be the other person because in relationships there's two people. So, but that being said, if the narrative that we're being told is that the other person's abusive, right, then we may advocate for our client. So essentially they try to find anyone who will reinforce their version of events. And this can leave you feeling isolated, doubted, or like you're constantly on trial, especially if they recruit your own family. And it happens. I have seen it often. So what's really happening here? This is about image management. Remember, people with narcissistic behaviors have an image. They want people in the outside world to see them as, awesome, great, charming. They don't need to be safe. They need to look right. The mental reframe, the truth doesn't need a crowd, but manipulation often does. But the truth, if you're telling the truth, you don't need to try to convince everybody. You don't need to bring in people, right? And one thing that somebody with narcissistic behavior, and I've said this before, says when they are insulting you, when they're bringing up insecurities or anything like that, 9 times out of 10, they will say to you, I'm not the only one that thinks that. Or I'm not the only one that said that. They probably are. But in order to manipulate you, they need the crowd. They can't just say it's their opinion. They need other people, right? And it's happened to me. People have said stuff about me that is so false But I know that these people have narcissistic behaviors. And when I say it to other people, they're like, you? No. Right? So it's not that the truth I'm not trying to get other people to manipulate, but when you are somebody who's experienced narcissistic abuse and then somebody says some of these things to you, you need confirmation or validation that it isn't what you're like, right? Number 7 is post-separation control tactics. So this is the part that most people talk about. They don't like to talk about it, but we have to. All of the control. So for some families, that control and intimidation continue after separation. It's just quieter, so it's not like in the house all the time. It's quieter and it's more procedural in the way that they do it. Again, a Justice Canada summary found that nearly 3/4, it was about 72%, of individuals with children who experienced violence after separation reported that a child had seen or heard at least one incident. That's a high number. Now, that doesn't mean that this is everyone's situation, but it does mean that minimizing post-separation dynamics can be dangerous for adults and kids. So it's about looking at it clearly and recognizing it and making changes, changing the dance, like I said. The mental reframe: separation does not automatically mean safety. It means that the tactics can change. All right, so those are all the things to recognize. And if you've recognized yourself in several of these, which if you're dealing with high conflict, narcissistic co-parenting, I'm pretty guaranteed you probably are or have. If you've recognized these, it's not because you're dramatic. That's what the other parent will say. But because the patterns are consistent. It's not a one-off. If it's a one-off, someone's having a bad day. These patterns are consistent in the co-parenting dynamic. So I want you to hear this clearly. You are not failing at co-parenting. You are navigating a high conflict system. The solution is not trying harder to be understood. It's learning how to change the structure of the interaction. Take your power back. Take your control back. Don't react to their comments and stuff. I know you're like, oh yeah, okay, Christine, that's that easy. It's not. I know that. I've been in this situation. And I'm going to give you some strategies to manage it. I'm just saying that we need to change the structure of the interaction so you and your child won't be emotionally drained by all of this. Before I get into strategies, I just want to look or explain what it does to your nervous system and why you feel crazy. I hear that all the time, and I know psychotherapists aren't supposed to use the term crazy, but I'm saying it as this is what I hear, right? I think I'm crazy. I think I'm losing my mind. I think I'm going crazy. I hear that all the time. If you do feel like you're losing your mind, I want you to pause for a second because this part matters, okay? Just pause right now. What you're experiencing is not a personal failing. It's not that you're too sensitive. I'm sure you've been told that. It's not that you're bad at boundaries. It is very hard to set boundaries with someone with narcissistic behaviors or high conflict people. They see a boundary and I always joke, just don't cross it. They do like a triple sow cow. Sow cow? I'm not a figure skater, but they do a backflip over that boundary, right? So it's very hard. Plus, you're probably intimidated by them or you don't want the war. And so it's hard to keep those boundaries. The nervous system, your body is responding exactly the way it's designed to respond to chronic relational threat. That's what it is. It's a chronic relational threat. When a co-parent is unpredictable, accusatory, or escalates simple interactions, your nervous system doesn't interpret this as annoying. It interprets it as danger. So it's not like, oh, here we go again. It's fight or flight. Your nervous system goes into fight or flight. It thinks that your life is in danger. Remember way back when I said that the limbic system, the stress response in your brain, hypothalamus can't distinguish and thalamus can't distinguish between dangers. This is a real danger. I might die. And this is a flashback, a thought, a feeling, a difficult situation. It just says, this is danger. So when you get these text messages or anticipate them, any of this stuff that is happening, your brain, your nervous system thinks you're in danger, and your brain is designed to protect you. Once your body decides something is dangerous, logic is out the window. Logic goes right offline because your frontal lobe shuts down. Your prefrontal cortex, which is the processing part of your brain, shuts down so that we don't overanalyze and try to process what's happening, and we just react in a dangerous situation. If I step off the sidewalk onto the road and a car is coming, I don't even think about it. I'm like, whoa, and I jump back. If this didn't shut off, I'd be standing there trying to figure out the best way to get out of the way, right? So this is your brain's way to protect you. So when you can't formulate words and everything and you just retreat, that is your brain protecting you. So what does this response in the nervous system look like in real life? You might notice things like hypervigilance. So you check messages over and over. So if you write them, you check them over and over and over. If they send one, you read it over and over so that you're not misinterpreting it, you're not saying the wrong thing, you're not reading it wrong. Your stomach drops every time your phone lights up or you hear that ding from a text message or whatever sound it is. You brace yourself before school events or transitions. That's your nervous system telling you to stay alert. Something could go wrong. Think about every time going to your child's school event or something and watching your surroundings and being hypervigilant and not being able to just enjoy your child on stage or parent-teacher interview or whatever it is. Rumination is something else that happens when the nervous system is impacted. You replay exchanges in your head over and over. You rewrite texts you already sent. So you send it and then you're like, oh, and you start to rewrite it in your head or you type it out again because maybe they're going to interpret it this way. I should probably justify it or say, oh, what I meant is. You think if I had have just said it differently, he or she wouldn't have responded that way. Not true. That is your right brain trying to get control. Okay? That is your right brain reacting, the emotion takes over. You're in danger, is what it thinks. Sleep disruption. You're fine most nights, but before custody exchanges, court dates, school meetings, school events, sporting events, if your kids are in sports, your sleep falls apart. That's not coincidence. That's anticipatory stress. So your brain knows it knows that tomorrow or 2 days from now, there's probably going to be chaos and you have to be on alert. So it disrupts your sleep. The next thing is panic spikes around official moments. So court, mediation, parent-teacher meetings, any space where power, judgment, or visibility are involved. So when I say court mediation, it's not because that other person's going to be there per se, but if there's any kind of power or judgment involved or visibility where they're going to see you as a parent or even as a person, then panic starts to come. Your body remembers past threats and events in moments of quiet. And then there's shame. This is the one that people don't talk about enough. You think, why can't I handle this? Why can't I do better at this? Other people co-parent just fine. Other people don't get upset. What's wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. Other people might not be co-parenting in a highly conflicting situation. I can't think of a word for that for some reason. Other people might not be co-parenting with someone who has narcissistic behaviors. The nervous system truth. Here's the reframe that changes everything. You are not reacting to this message. So let's say it's a text message. You're not reacting to this message. You are reacting to a pattern. It's not that one message. Your body has learned that neutral communication can turn hostile. Boundaries are triggers or can trigger attacks if you try to set a boundary. Calm does not guarantee safety. So your body has learned that. So as soon as you get a text message, you're not reacting to that. You're reacting to what has happened over and over. So your body stays on guard. Your brain stays on guard. That's not weakness. That is your body and brain adapting. That's adaptation. And adaptation is intelligent, even when it's exhausting. Think about if you were it wasn't with an ex-partner, a difficult situation. If you were out in the wilderness, right? This stress response, this nervous system, if you were like surviving out in the wilderness, it adapts. Your body adapts. Intellectually, you adapt to different situations to protect you. Same thing's happening here. It's exhausting, but it's actually intelligent how your brain just does it. A lot of people will say, well, just do this to co-parent. Well, try this when you're co-parenting. But normal co-parenting advice fails in these situations. It's not even close to the same thing. And this is where a lot of people get stuck because they either compare themselves to other people who are co-parenting in a healthy manner or effectively. Well, there's probably neither one of those partners are probably operating in high conflict or narcissistic behaviors. They're told to just communicate better, be flexible, give them the benefit of the doubt. Don't forget that, this isn't just starting after separation. This person has been dealing with these behaviors probably for a really long time. In a high conflict dynamic, those assumptions don't hold. You can't do any of these things with somebody who has narcissistic behavior. So instead of calming your system, they actually increase your stress. They actually activate your nervous system again when people give you this advice. Or if you see, social media, things about it, any of those things. So now you're trying to apply collaborative tools inside a non-collaborative situation or system. That's going to exacerbate the situation for sure. So this is where your mental playbook truly begins. We need to stop treating this like normal co-parenting. And we need to start treating it like what it is. A high conflict system that requires structure, predictability, and nervous system protection. The goal is no longer being understood, being validated, being seen as reasonable. We're not going to do that anymore. The goal becomes reducing exposure, reducing ambiguity, and reducing emotional activation. We're going to take our power back. Because every time your nervous system settles, your clarity returns. If we reduce those situations I just spoke about, your nervous system is going to settle. Your parenting is going to improve, and your child is going to feel safer. And most importantly, you're going to stop asking yourself, why am I like this? You're not like this. You're under pressure. I get asked that question all the time. Why am I like this? If I was to analyze, right? There's a multitude of reasons why we're like this, but it's not like you're not like this. You're under so much pressure. You're responding to high conflict and stress, and your nervous system is firing on all cylinders. So that's what's going on. If you take one thing from this segment that I just spoke about, let it be this. You don't need to fix yourself to survive this dynamic. you're not the one that needs to be fixed, right? And you're not going to fix the other person. You need a system that stops re-traumatizing you. And that's exactly what we're building, step by step, inside this mental playbook today. Okay? So, now we're going to go to some strategies. Stay with me. I told you this was a heavy topic, and it's pretty complex, so that's why I have a lot of information, but you know that I want people to have the information. It's not cookie cutter, high conflict parenting either, right? There's different situations. So I want to try to reach as many people as I can. The core strategies, I want you to look at it like your mental playbook with narcissistic co-parenting or narcissistic behavior, high conflict co-parenting. This is where we shift from insight, right, to strategy. So I gave you some insight into it. Now let's shift to strategy. Once you understand that this is a high conflict system, the question becomes, how do I parent without sacrificing me or my mental health or my child's? And the answer is not try harder. It's change the model, change the system. So the first thing you want to do is shift from co-parenting to parallel parenting. You cannot co-parent with somebody who is in a high conflict system. You cannot co-parent with somebody with narcissistic behavior. You can parallel parent. So traditional co-parenting assumes goodwill, flexibility, and shared goals. That's what co-parenting is. High conflict parenting needs a different model. So that's what parallel parenting. Parallel parenting isn't cold. It's not, I'm not going to talk to you, I'm not going to. It's protective. So the basics of parallel parent, that's hard to say. The basics of parallel parenting: tight written agreements, fewer decision points. You're always going to have to make decisions with the other parent, most likely, with respect to your child, but try to minimize those as much as possible by having a very, tight written agreement, court-ordered agreement. Separate lanes, less overlap. You take care of this, I'll take care of this. Neutral, business-like communication. Predictable routines for the child. I know that people are going to say, well, that's going to impact the child if you have a, neutral, business-like communication. The child doesn't have to know about your communication. A text message, or there's apps that you can use, family apps and stuff that you can use. Just neutral, business-like, not take the emotion out of it. So a reframe for this isn't about being difficult. It's about reducing friction. Can't talk today. It's about reducing friction in a system that ignites easily. The next one is BIFF, B-I-F-F, communication. Brief, informative, friendly, and firm. BIFF communication is one of the most powerful tools that you can use because it starves conflict of oxygen. Instead of, you always do this and it's upsetting our child. Try this. Drop off is at 5 p.m. at the usual location. Please confirm. No defense, no explanation, no emotional hooks. So I came up with some BIFF script books, right? Some scripts that you can use, and they're, just like this as a reply. Noted. I'm available to discuss school matters by email. Please communicate directly with me, not through our child. I will follow the order, plan as written. The message is about scheduling only. I know if you are somebody who has been in this narcissistic dynamic, you are thinking, that's horrible, that's cold, that's mean. That reduces conflict. Because how are they supposed to say, you are so reactive, you are so aggressive, right? They may say you're cold. Okay. This is just to the point. There's nothing that they can use in this or use against you to get you going, right? So, yeah. So I want you to remember that clarity is not cruelty. This is very clear and to the point. And brevity is not hostility. So try some BIF communication. Brief, informative, friendly, and firm. I know some of those didn't sound so friendly, but it's probably because of the way we're looking at them. Because if you're listening to this, you're probably someone who is, in the victim role of it. And so you're looking at that as unfriendly, but it's just fact. The next one is gray rock with boundaries, not silence. So gray rock does not mean disappearing or tolerating abuse, right? It's just like neutral. It means no emotional fuel. The rule I want you to follow: respond to logistics and child needs only. If they go on a rant and you read it, if you read it, you don't have to read their rants, but if they do and you read it, pull out the logistical parts and pull out things with child needs and respond to those two things only using BIF communication. Ignore commentary, accusations, and any bait. Rage baiting, right? Rage bait is this, I hear it all over now, right? That's what they're trying to do. Avoid any of that. Ignore all of that. If it's not about time, location, health, school, or safety, it doesn't get your energy. You are not disengaging from parenting. You're still parenting your child. You are disengaging from chaos. The next one is document like a professional. You need to document everything. This is boring, right? This part is boring to document stuff, but it's incredibly powerful. Document calmly, factually, and consistently. So just keep a simple log. Date, time, what happened, and impact on the child. Save emails, screenshot texts, store them in one place. Avoid editorializing. Avoid editorializing. So instead of they were insane and aggressive, write raised voice during exchange, child appeared distressed. Why this matters? Emotion convinces no one, and patterns do. So if you are getting, they were insane and aggressive, that's your interpretation. Maybe someone can say that. If you stick to the facts, they raised their voice, fact. And the child appeared distressed, fact. Could be your perception, but you're making your notes, right? If the child's crying, they're distressed. So we don't need to use emotion to convince people. We just need the facts. The next one is use tools that reduce chaos. So some families benefit from structured communication platforms. A lot of my clients now are using, I think it's called, I have it here, but I think the one that a lot of my clients are using is Our Family Wizard. I think that there might be other ones out there, but I know some clients have said to me, Our Family Wizard, or there's some other family apps. But you want to use these communication platforms, especially in high conflict situations. It's all right there. And I know that some of my clients, like the judge can log in and see the interactions and stuff, or you can give access to it, or you can show it. So it's a neutral thing. It's not your text messages. It's an app. And for example, that one, Our Family Wizard, states it's accepted by courts across Canada and is designed to create clear time-stamped records. So everything, every exchange and everything has a timestamp. So when you are, and some of my clients obviously are seeing me because they're in these high conflict co-parenting situations, and they use these. And when the parent who is very difficult says, no, this happened, it's like, and it's time stamped, and the other parent can't delete things that they said. And you would not believe the number of difficult parents who just go off on these as well, right? And then it's right there, it's time stamped, it's logged, and the courts can see it. So really track everything. Use whatever tools fit your situation, your budget, because I think there's a cost for these apps, and your legal advice. So use your legal advice. The goal isn't the app, the goal is the containment of everything. So obviously, if you can't afford these apps, I don't think they're too expensive, but nowadays money is not, budgets are very tight. So it's not about the app. Yes, it's nice that it has a timestamp, courts can see it, but just keep everything contained somewhere. The next one is use boundaries that actually work. So like I said, if you say, nope, I'm not doing this, or this is when you need to drop off at 5 o'clock, or, stop messaging me these insults. They're going to message you more insults. They're going to push that boundary. So what we need to do to create boundaries, it's a mind shift that really works. Okay. So, well, hopefully it really works. It's a very important mind shift. All right. So a boundary isn't what you want them to do. And I've talked about boundaries in other videos. A boundary isn't what we want the other person to do. A boundary is what you will do. So for example, instead of stop sending messages with insults, it's if messages include insults, I will not respond to those parts. I will respond to child logistics only. That's your boundary. And that's how you set boundaries with people with narcissistic behaviors, because they can't cross that. They can send a message with insults. They'll try to push that boundary. You don't answer that. So that's the boundary. If you do this, this is what I will do. Your boundary can also be, I will discuss school topics in writing. I will not do same-day changes unless it's an emergency. And this isn't about flexibility. This is like when you have, a lot of times with these co-parenting with these parents with narcissistic behaviors, they try to do the last minute things, even if it's not really warranted, it's not in the child's best interest, to try to inconvenience you or try to have control to see if you will be flexible. And if you're not flexible, then they tell the child, see, I tried, your other parent is really difficult, right? So in those situations, I will not do same-day changes unless it's an emergency. You don't announce boundaries to get agreement, because they're not going to agree with you. You enforce them through consistency, your consistency. The next one is repair your nervous system after contact. Every time you have contact with a co-parent who exhibits high conflict, narcissistic behaviors, your nervous system is going to be activated. So do a 2-minute reset. Every interaction has a cost to your nervous system. So we build in recovery on purpose. So this is the 2-minute reset. You can do it with me right now if you want to. Exhale longer than you inhale. So in for 4, out for 6. Do this 3 to 6 times. You can do more if you want. 3 to 6 can usually bring down the stress response. Drop your shoulders with purpose and unclench your jaw. Like you can move it around. Name 5 things you see in detail. Don't just like, there's a painting, there's a TV, it's like, there's a painting with blue, different shades of blue and gold. Really focus in. Because if you're focusing on that, you're not focusing on the internal dialogue. And then after you do that, say, I'm safe right now. This is stress. This is not danger. Do one grounding action. ice cold water on your face, a cold pack on your neck, your forehead, your wrists. Go for a walk, a short walk. Listen to music, have a shower, bring yourself down. You don't want to carry their nervous system into your home or into your child's evening or day. So these strategies, this is the heart of the mental playbook, your mental playbook. We stop trying to win arguments. We stop trying to be understood. That doesn't matter anymore, because no matter what you say or do, they're going to use that to create chaos. We start building systems that protect mental health, reduce reactivity, and give children the one thing they need most: a calm, regulated parent, on one side at least, right? You can only control you. So how do we protect our child's mental health through this without trashing the other parent? One of the hardest parts of high conflict parenting, co-parenting, is this question. How do I protect my child without making things worse or turning them against the other parent? Because no matter what that parent is like with you, that is still your child's parent. And one thing, and I'm not just saying this about the co-parent who might have narcissistic behavior, but something that I hear all the time, and kids say to me, when you trash the other parent or you comment negatively about anything about them, your child is part of them. And the number of kids through my 30 plus years of doing this who have said to me, does that mean I'm like that? It's astonishing, the number of kids that say that and how they internalize it, because they know they're part of them. So if you are trashing them, again, this is just kind of a sidebar in any co-parenting situation. If you are commenting negatively on the other parent, your child's part of them. They have their DNA too, and they internalize that as them being the same way. Keep that in mind. Here's the anchor that I want you to hold on to when you're questioning how you protect your child's mental health and protect them while not turning them against the other parent. Kids do best with emotional safety, predictability, and permission to love both parents. Was I a perfect parent? Not even close. Did I do my best to try to have my child be part of his other parent's life, even though that other person had narcissistic behavior and were horrible to me through this, and all of these things applied? Yes. Did I say things about the other parent sometimes to my child and I probably shouldn't have? Absolutely. I learned this stuff from my own life too, but I still try to encourage a relationship. And sometimes I even questioned that because I might have pushed it too hard. And obviously everybody's circumstances are different. And in my circumstances, maybe I shouldn't have pushed too as hard. But hindsight bias, I didn't know in those moments what the outcome was going to be. So kids need this permission to love their other parent, even if that parent is difficult. You don't protect your child by convincing them who's right. You protect them by giving their nervous system somewhere safe to land. Because if your nervous system's activated, I can guarantee you theirs are. So what helps kids the most? The first thing, stable routines at your home. You can't control what's going on at the other parent's home. And I also hear that all the time. They're not eating right, they're not doing this. You can't control that. You can only control what's in your home. And in high conflict families, the outside world can feel really unpredictable. So your home becomes a stabilizer. Consistent meals, consistent bedtime routines, consistent expectations in your home. Not rigid, but reliable. This tells the child's nervous system, I know what happens here. I can relax here. Again, you can't control the other house. The second thing is emotion coaching, not fixing and not interrogating. Children in these dynamics often feel confused, loyal, guilty, or pulled. So your job isn't to correct these feelings, it's to name and normalize them. So helpful phrases. It makes sense that you feel mixed up. You're allowed to love both parents. You don't have to choose sides. If the other parent is saying the opposite of these, think how regulated or how the relief that child's going to feel hearing that from you. It's powerful. They do something powerful. They remove the child from this emotional battlefield that they most likely feel in. The next one is no interrogation after visits. This is a big one. And it's usually well-intentioned because, especially if the other parent's difficult, you may be fearing for your child and you want to check in. But avoid rapid-fire questions like, what happened? What did they say? Were they acting weird? Did they say anything mean to you? This makes the child feel like a reporter, or worse, it makes them feel like a spy. Even questions like, what did you do? What did you eat? Did he or she take you to your sport? It makes them feel like a spy. Did they have anyone over? That's a big one, actually. I just thought of that. A lot of kids, if you're wondering if the other parent is starting to see someone, or they use their kids as spy to try to test that, right? So instead of that, try, how was your week? Anything you want to talk about? Anything you want to tell me about your week? And if they say no, okay. Just let that silence do some of the work. And the next one is name the behavior, not the label. You do not need to diagnose, label, or explain the other parent to your child. Children don't need personality theory. They need values and boundaries. So for example, and this might sound like you're trashing the other parent, but you're not. If they're being disrespectful, or if they're saying stuff like, well, I do that at dad or mom's house. In our home, we speak respectfully. In our home, adults handle adult problems. It's okay to tell me when something feels uncomfortable. I had a situation when I worked in the school system, and we had to use that. We had a little guy, this was probably 20 years ago, and we had a little guy, and he called his EA an effing B word. And the EA came to me and she was like, what? Like, I think he was 6. And so then she told me that she talked to mom about it when mom came to get him. And this was a parent who had narcissistic behaviors 100%. And when the EA told mom said, wow, he hasn't called me that in a long time. What did you do to deserve that one? So when the EA told me that, I said, okay, we know what we're dealing with. We're not going to talk to mom about this stuff, but we are going to teach him in our space, we talk respectfully. In our space, we don't use those words. So we taught him that we can't control what happens at mom's house, but this is what we can control. So that's what you do with your child. Often what happens too is when the child comes home from the parent who has narcissistic behaviors, the conflict parent, they start talking to you disrespectfully because most likely that other parent has either given them permission, has spoken in a derogatory manner about you, and so that child feels like they can do it too, or they're angry and they take it out on you. So it just keeps the focus on what's okay here, not what's wrong there. The next one is give them a safe script. Give your child a safe script. Kids in high conflict co-parenting often feel stuck in the middle, and they don't know how to get out of it. They don't want to upset either parent. They don't want to say the wrong thing. So you can help by giving them simple, neutral scripts. So examples that you can help them with. If they come to you and say some of these are scripts that they can use. I'm not comfortable being in the middle. Please ask my mom or dad that and don't get me to. I don't want to talk about that. We work with kids on advocating for themselves using these in a respectful manner. We also don't want to set them up to get in trouble either, right? So these phrases give the child language for boundaries, their own boundaries, without asking them to be confrontational. And the last one is use school as an ally. Schools can be powerful stabilizers when they're informed, just briefly and professionally. You don't need to go and unload, what's that saying, all your dirty laundry, right, to the school. But you don't need to overshare, but you do want predictability. You do want them to have an idea. So consider letting teachers or school staff know there's a high conflict co-parenting issue or situation. Asking for communication to be clear and written and things documented. And requesting advance notice of meetings or changes when possible. This reduces surprises, which then reduces the stress for your child. So the bigger picture, so why prevention matters in this situation. Child mental health pressures don't only show up in therapy offices, right? They don't just come to us, and they don't just show up when they come see us. They show up in systems. So the Canadian Institute for Health Information has reported substantial volumes of child and youth mental health related emergency department visits over time. So it happens in medical systems, in school systems. These mental health issues show up everywhere. And that statistic tells something important. Your goal is prevention. Lower the stress load for your child and increase their felt safety. You cannot control what happens in the other home. It's impossible to. But you can be the parent who doesn't pull the child into adult conflict, who regulates instead of interrogates, who models boundaries instead of blame. One regulated, emotionally safe parent makes a measurable difference. You can't control them, you can't change them, you regulate yourself, you become less reactive, you do all the things that we talked about today, and you become that emotionally safe parent. That makes a difference. It's not naive, and it's not, that can't happen. That's not going to happen. That's actually neuroscience. A child needs one supportive adult to thrive. Those are studies that are done. That will calm their nervous system. And that is how you protect your child without destroying their relationship with the other parent and without destroying yourself. So just some quick rapid fire questions that I've had in session that I'm not going to explain them, I'm just going to give them to you. So question, should I call them out? Should I call that other parent out on this stuff? A call out usually becomes a stage. They want chaos. So go for clear limits and documentation instead. You don't need to call them out. They want you to react. Document and set clear limits. The next question, what if they keep changing plans? Return to the written plan. Reference it. Stay firm in your boundaries with that. Offer one option. Document that they keep changing. Repeat. Consistency is your power. Don't play the game. Don't do their dance. Change your dance. The next question. My child says they hate going there. What do I do? I get that a lot. That's huge. Validate their feelings. Avoid bad-mouthing and gather support. a child therapist if possible, and document patterns. If safety is a concern, talk to a lawyer or local services that you have. The fourth question, then the last question, is how do I stop obsessing over their texts? Remember that is re-traumatizing because this person was your partner and they didn't just change. So you are obsessing over their texts because they're activating your nervous system. So contain it. You can do 2 scheduled check times. So if they're texting or they're messaging in the app, just schedule 2 check times per day. Put their notifications on silent. If they have your child with them, then you might not want to do that just in case there's an emergency. But if not, turn the notifications off and do a 2-minute reset after every time that you read the text. All right. How much of this was familiar? I know, because of what I do, that there are a lot of you out there who are experiencing this right now and who are feeling stuck in this and probably were like, wow. And my hope with this is that you're like, there's a way out. I hope after hearing this that you know that you don't have to be stuck in this forever and you can take your power back. The first step of taking your power back was leaving the relationship, but you can take your power back more and protect your child. So if you are co-parenting with a high conflict, narcissistic style pattern, here's the headline. You don't need their insight to build stability. You need a strategy that lowers contact, reduces ambiguity, protects the child from adult conflicts, and protects you from nervous system burnout. If you or your child needs immediate support in Canada, if you are feeling like there's no way out, we do have a suicide hotline, 988. You can call or text. It's available 24/7 across Canada. Sometimes it gets that bad when you're constantly dealing with that. Or there's a kids' help phone for ages 5 to 29. Call 1-800-668-6868 or text CONNECT to 686868. So that's in Canada. I would recommend if you're outside of Canada that you look for these numbers. There's also therapists who can help you. I help kids through this. I don't do kids as much now, but I have some. But my therapists in my office help kids move through this. But I help a lot of people navigate these situations. So sometimes talking to a therapist and getting these strategies and working on building your self-esteem again is really important. All right. Thank you for listening to the Mental Playbook with Christine Dalgety. If you know somebody who you think will benefit from this, if it's not you, please share. I want to help as many people navigate through this and get their power back, as well as protect their children. All right. You know the drill. Take care of you. That's it for today's episode of the Mental Playbook with Christine Dalgety. Remember, the work doesn't end when the episode does. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of these conversations. If you're enjoying the podcast, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. It helps us grow and reach more people who might need this too. And don't forget, take care of you.